This is Kagekaze back with the Monk in Diablo 3. I wanted to go over a couple things here before I level. As you can see here, I've gotten really close. I've just been blitzing through the storyline again. What I did while I was here, though, is I got my blacksmith near the maximum level, as you can see here. And what I noticed is there was a slight change here. The page of blacksmithing in the it seems to have gone up. I believe that was 10 before. It looks like it's 25 now. Specific reason I want to bring that up is if you haven't looked at it, I recommend you look at the BattleNet page for Diablo 3. Simply because you're going to see that the leveling of the blacksmith is going to be a lot of time. A lot of time. Level 4 is the end of normal. And you can tell that by a lot of the stuff you can make. Look at the chain belt, 23. Master plate, 25. 26. You know, a lot of these things. The tower shield, 24. This pretty much confirms that they're expecting you to be level 30 by the end of normal. So you're going to get all of your abilities and all of your passives at level 30. In fact, there's a great chart online that shows when you gain each ability and each passive and each runestone. After you hit level 30, you're going to start getting 3 to 4 runestones per level. So every time you level, it's not just one thing you're going to get to play with. You're going to get a nice toolbox of things to play with. 3 to 4 abilities. If you're a wizard, it's almost always 4 because the wizard has the most abilities and therefore the most runestones. Pardon me. So there's a lot there, and as far as the blacksmith is concerned, you're going to need a lot of these. The final level for the blacksmith right now is slated at about 500 pages, I believe, or 100. I think it's 100 for the blacksmith, 500 for the jeweler. We'll have to see if that changes. But that's what I kind of wanted to show you once I noticed it, is that you're going to have a lot of time sinking here for the blacksmith. Those pages are not going to drop until nightmare mode. Also, one thing I wanted to kind of go over is your concerning about these strikes here, because as you can see, I'm using a combination of Deadly Reach with Exploding Palm. Part of my intention is to be able to get the first 2 of Reach with the last one of Palm, but things are dying so quickly that I usually end up defaulting to the 3 of Reach. You know, when you consider that, and I mentioned this before, some abilities are only going to use your main hand weapon for damage. And that's always this here on the left. This is always your offhand. So you always want to keep your highest damaging weapon here in your main hand. And it's even more so true for the monk, because not only do you have a lot of high cooldown spells that are going to use only that main hand ability, but when you think about it, that third hit always goes back. It's going to be main off main, main off main. So that means that final hit that you want to get off of your weapons, you want to make sure that your main hand weapon is your strongest weapon if you are dual wielding. Obviously, if you're using a two-handed weapon, you don't even have to worry about this. But it's something I covered before, wanted to make sure I covered again.
My friend, I'm sorry. Apologies will not leave him to rest, blacksmith. Swing your bloody hammer.
This must be done.
I'm honestly thinking that this quest will get me the level I need.
Mira, my love, forgive me. Love is the surest road to a tragic end. That is why I have sworn. I can help you find this too.
And there it is, level 12.
And if you see my fool apprentice,
Alright, this is going to be fun. Tempest Rush is an ability that we did not get in the beta before, so I am looking forward to trying it. I'm pretty sure we didn't get it in the beta before. I know I didn't get it, again, didn't get to level 13. So let's look here. Tempest Rush is... It's not flashing new. It should be. Let's go back. Okay, it's a secondary. So I'm going to make Deadly Reach my primary, I think. So let's go into secondary. We're going to do Tempest Rush. Deadly Reach with Trident as my main. And then Dashing Strike and Lashing Tail Kick. Okay, Tempest Rush. I have no official patch notes on it because they didn't tell us any changes to that. Let me look at the Diablo fans patch notes. Okay, there was a change to Tempest Rush. Alright, 15 Spirit, plus an additional 15 spirit while channeling. So this is the first channeling ability I've seen for the monk. Run directly through your enemies, knocking them back and hobbling them, slowing their movement by 60% for 2 seconds, also dealing 50% weapon damage while running. I'm looking forward to trying that because that's one of those mobility abilities that you get for the monk, and it looks rather interesting. So you get to run through enemies and slow them down as well as do damage. So that's honestly a really great escape mechanism when you think about it. You'll be in a group of monsters, you need to get out, start doing Tempest Rush and just get out of there. You'll slow them down, you'll run away, or even just charging in. You don't need the slowing effect for running in, but you'll be doing damage and knocking them around a bit. According to the notes I have here, though, the slow has actually been buffed. It used to be 50%, it's now 60%. For 2 seconds, okay, so it's been buffed and nerfed at the same time. The movement speed reduction has been increased to 60% from 50, but the duration is 2 seconds instead of 3 seconds. So they move slower, but it doesn't last as long. And the weapon damage has been reduced. It used to be 170% weapon damage. Again, it's a utility ability. Doing 170 is a bit high for a utility. So that is expected. Passive, we're going to go here, and we have fleet-footed. I'm just going to double check that that hasn't been changed in some way. Again, sorry for the waiting on that. Fleet-footed. Nope, don't see any change. Increase movement speed by 10%. That is just a flat. I mean, I can see some people might like it because, you know, movement speed increases are really great for getting in and out of situations. I mean, it's one of those things that you can't quantify as a damage increase. Obviously, faster movement speed means you can get into monsters faster, you can get away from them faster, so it can be counted as both offensive and defensive. Things are dying quickly. I'm going to go ahead and use it to kind of move myself around quicker. Obviously, it's not working right now because I just slotted it. But we're going to try Tempest Rush here on this bridge. That's pretty interesting. It's obviously not going to do a lot of damage, but got into a group of them and just was able to slow them down, do a tiny bit of damage to the group.
The blacksmith's apprentice is dead.
It's looking like I don't have to worry about running around monsters with it, though. It's looking like I go right through. What's interesting, if you look at the animation, let me get a full spirit bar here. It looks like the monk is using a staff while running, which makes sense since that is one of the weapons they can use. So once again, you know, they don't use the weapon animations of what you have equipped. It's basically meant to look like you are basically running towards the enemy, spinning your staff around, knocking the enemies back so that you can move through them. But it definitely, it looks so far like enemies can normally block your movement. They take up real space in the environment. You can't get past them. So if you get a large group of enemies that surrounds you, you have a very hard time getting out. The only real ways that a monk's going to have to get out of that situation is going to be dashing strike to a distant enemy, which I think is actually hindered by enemy movement. I think dashing strike actually will not teleport through the enemy. I'm not 100% sure on that. But this ability, as you can see, yep, there it is. You see how it's knocking them back? You can use this just to get out of those groups. That's really interesting utility spell. The monk really seems to have a lot of utility abilities. Doesn't have the hardest hitting abilities though, with a notable exception. Wave of Light. 150 weapon damage followed by an additional 150 weapon damage is wholly to all enemies in a line. Well, it feels like that's gone down because I could have sworn that was higher. But let's look at 7-sided. 777 weapon damage over 7 hits, and that's 50 spirit with a 30-second cooldown. So as you can see, the monk, mobile, a lot of utility, a lot of ways to get around the enemy, a lot of ways to hurt multiple enemies. Not a high-end damage dealer for single target, except for certain abilities. If you want high-end damage, you're going to have to get specific abilities. As opposed to, say, the wizard, which is a glass cannon, which has a lot of abilities that hit really hard and earn some really hard hitting abilities early on. The barbarian, which has some very hard hitting abilities as well, doesn't have a lot of the types of utilities that the monk has. I mean, the monk can be a healer. The barbarian can be a tank, though, and you could probably tank with the monk to an extent. Especially with the right passives.
The gods strike through me.
Now that I've got full spirit, let me go ahead and get this demonstrated here. I'm going to zoom in. See, up there it is. You can see the staff in her hands.
Not enough spirit.
Lasts for a good amount of time, too, when you have full spirit. So the monk is not going to be the class for you if you're looking for hard hits, from the looks of it. More for utility. And of course, in the end, damage is not always the best thing to look at for a class. Sometimes it's just the way they play. I really do like these combination strikes. Not sure that the monk will be my first class, but I definitely like what the monk has. Alright, well, that being said, I'm going to go ahead and continue to try and get as many to get to my final level here, actually, since level 12. Just one more and I'm at max. And I'll report to you what I find. Okay. I'm back. And I have fought and killed the Skeleton King yet again. He nearly gave me the level I wanted. I'm going to tell you, fighting the Skeleton King with some of these different abilities was an interesting experience. Deadly Reach was actually very useful. I was able to keep away from the king at maximum distance here. So Fist of Thunder has a new rune, Lightning Flash, and I have a new passive, Transcendence. So we'll look into those once we kill everything here. But yeah, Deadly Reach was exceptionally useful. The king could not really touch me at all as long as I stayed at the maximum range and just moved away from him every now and then. So I'll talk about my impressions of the monk once we cover these items. Oh, I have damaged items. I've not seen that before. I'll have to get some of my stuff repaired. Alright, let's look at my passive first. Every point of spirit heals you for 1.1 life. Now, I'm pretty sure that that's going to change as I level. 1.1, I mean, it's in green. It doesn't mean it will change, but more than likely it will, because 1.1 is not a lot. So there's another nice defensive ability there. You use your spirit and you get healed. That includes Breath of Heaven. I mean, you sit there and you heal yourself with Breath of Heaven, and then the spirit you used for Breath of Heaven gives you back even more life. So it doesn't look like that has changed in any way. So I will just go ahead and keep moving on from there. We're going to go into Fist of Thunder and then the new rune, Lightning Flash. Fist of Thunder increases your dodge chance by 16% for 2 seconds. So this is very defensive, obviously. We're basically losing damage for the sake of defense. Although I say losing damage, that's not entirely true. You still get the 100% weapon damage of Fist of Thunder. So this is indeed a buff from the default Fist of Thunder. Simply because you're getting not only the 100% weapon damage, but an additional 16% chance to dodge. Honestly, compared to Bounding Light, it has the same differences between Bounding Light as it has the Fist of Thunder. You're losing the 100% damage and the knockback for AoE damage. So I'm going to go ahead and use this to kind of see it in action and to kind of see how the buff stacks. So it's 16% for 2 seconds, and more than likely every hit is going to regenerate or increase the refresh the stack. So let's find someone so I can make sure that that's the case. Oh, that's a nice spell effect on that, actually. I really like the way that looks. As you can see, it's not very long, but it just keeps getting refreshed with every hit. Let me just make sure it doesn't... Yeah, it doesn't work on those. Let's find some new mobs, and we'll take a look at the timer here as it goes along. Just constantly refreshing. So if I had another ability, like 2 spirit generators on, I could alternate between keeping the dodge up with another ability. I'm going to zoom in and look at that. That is pretty, for lack of a better word. I like the look of it. So not too much to show you here at level 13, but let's talk a bit about my thoughts on the monk here, just to kind of give you an idea. I think the monk has really nice utility abilities, offensive and defensive. It seems like the monk will spend most of its time using spirit generators. This is not necessarily a bad thing, as the spirit generators all have uses for different situations. Fists of Thunder for faster generation, Deadly Reach to keep your distance, Exploding Palm for single target damage and AoE. If we go further here into techniques, these are all generators as well. Crippling Wave, Sweeping Wind, and Way of the 100 Fists. Crippling Wave being a movement speed and attack speed reduction, so it's a debuff as well as 100% weapon damage. Sweeping Wind, 100% weapon damage, and creates a vortex that does damage over time. So you could combine that with some of the other generators to create some combination AoE abilities. And then Way of the 100 Fists, which is the one generator that does more than 100% weapon damage, 125% weapon damage per strike. So that one is just pure damage. So the monk, from what I'm seeing, is not going to be one of the high damage output classes. But here's what the monk has in his favor. Now, of course, Way of the 100 Fists, you can see that, yes, the monk does have abilities that are just as good as other classes for getting damage out there. Of course, that's going to take a while to get. At least in the beta, we don't have a lot of things that hit super hard. Lash Tail Kick being 200%, which, you know, that is decent, but of course, with the cost of it, you're going to be running out of spirit fairly quickly. So again, you'll be hitting your generators a lot. But since each of those have their own utility, they're not bad spells, even if they are only 100% weapon damage for the most part. Every ability that the monk has gives the monk a way to get into or out of combat, such as Dashing Strike there. Lashing Tail Kick knocks enemies back if I need them to be pushed away, as well as doing decent damage. When I was fighting the Skeleton King just a moment ago, the Tremor Rush was actually very useful for enemies with the shields, as I could just run right through them. Tempest Rush is a great way to get into and out of combat, just knocking the enemies around, getting away from them. There are many abilities that the monk has that gets damage out over a group, so even though we may not have a high amount of single target damage on a lot of these abilities, look at Fist of Thunder here. I'm hitting a group of enemies even though it's technically not my AoE ability. Deadly Reach has a large radius on it. Exploding Palm, damage over an area. Sweeping Wind. So many of the monk's abilities will be putting a lot of damage out in a big area. Not to mention the monk's defensive abilities, such as this rune, which is giving me dodge, the ability to hit a monster and make it do less damage, healing, the ability to heal other classes. Great single player and group utilities. All of these. It doesn't matter if you're playing alone or in a group. There is a ability for your playstyle. So the monk is very, I would guess say modular. I mean, you can basically make the monk do what you want the monk to do. There are abilities for high single target damage down the road. There are defensive abilities. There are offensive abilities. Your mobility is the mantra of the monk. You have ways of basically getting to your target without having to really worry about anything else. I like the monk class in regards to this. So that's it. Honestly, I think if you like having an answer for every situation, you know, having a toolbox full of different ways of changing the flow of combat. I mean, that's really what this class is about, is the flow of combat. You really control how you want to approach a monster or a situation. So I think if that's what you like, I think you might like the monk. So honestly, again, like the class, still not sure which one would be my main. All 5 classes are really looking solid at this point. All the leveling experiences this far, 1 to 13, have been great. And looking at the skill gain up to level 60, I really see things going well for all the classes. I don't think any one class is going to really jump ahead as the best, although a lot of people are going to have their favorites. Wizard and Barbarian seem to be the popular ones, but the others have their place as well, again, either in group or single player scenarios. Alright, well, that's it. Hopefully you have enjoyed this content with the monk. Honestly, it's been a pleasure to put that out there. It's been a pleasant surprise, honestly, since they've rearranged the skills, being able to play with some of these, so I really like what they've done. The Runestones especially, Deadly Reach's Trident being a favorite of mine right now. So, if you like the content, thumb it up. If you have any questions or comments, leave them in the comments section. What I'd like to do this time is, just like last time, the Barbarian seemed to be, well, actually they were kind of even. Wizard and Barbarian were at 5 votes each, while the Monk was at 12. So high favor on the Monk here. So what I'd like to do is ask you guys again to leave comments if you have a class that you want to see. Your choices are obviously Wizard and Barbarian. Do you want ranged or do you want melee? Both are really good classes. I'm looking forward to doing both of them. Alright, so leave some comments. I'm not going to make this one super long like I did this one for a couple days. It really depends on my schedule. This one I'll just get to as soon as I can. But I'll look at what you guys say and try to pick the one that seems to be the most favorited. Alright? Thanks again, guys. This is Kage Kaze, signing off.